We've long heard legends of fire-breathing dragons wreaking havoc on their enemies with pyrotechnic halitosis. But generally, animals are more the victims of arson as opposed to the conspirators. However, that is not always the case. Today, we're bringing you stories of fires started by birds, mammals, reptiles, insects, and even one fire blamed on a fish. But I have to say, I think that one's a frame job. And just as animals have been blamed as fire starters, some animals have been credited as heroes, protecting humans and other animals from fires. In fact, animals have played a role in firefighting for longer than many realize. And while you might think the term arsonist is a stretch because arson implies intent, you'd better sit down, because scientists have identified at least one species that intentionally sets fires. So get ready to give your pets some serious side-eye on this episode of Animal Arsonists on Crime to Burn. Welcome to Crime to Burn, where we explore the dark city landscape where true crime intersects with arson and criminal negligence. Join us as we sift through the ashes and bring you the story of what really happened. I'm April, a fire protection engineer and former firefighter.
And I'm Jerry Attenborough, nature expert.
I thought it was David Attenborough.
I'm Jerry.
Oh, you're his brother Jerry?
No relation.
No relation. Okay. A quick reminder that we'd be so very grateful if you would leave us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you use to listen. And if you'd also please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our channel, that would be a huge help. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and X. I'm admittedly most active on Instagram, so swing on over to our profile and say hello. And if you see social media content from us, give us a like, share it with your friends, drop a comment on it. It would really help us to get seen by more people, which goes a long way in helping us grow our audience. And before we get started, I have to warn everyone. We're attempting the never before attempted. And that is recording with the animals and the child awake. This is a daytime recording. So, we'll do our best to edit out any interruptions and noise, but they may briefly appear, and we apologize in advance. For the reason we're all here, animal arsonists. Now, I started the intro with a discussion on fire-breathing dragons, and incidentally, as I was doing research for this episode, I was doing some pretty odd searches trying to zero in on some unusual animals that have been blamed for fires. And you know how Google sometimes suggests related searches? Well, I looked down and Google's like, how about you search for animals that can breathe fire? And I was all, haha, yeah, right, those don't exist. But I clicked because intrusive thoughts, they win sometimes. And while we don't have an animal that can literally breathe fire, we had something that I initially believed to be alarmingly close until I learned more about it. But I'm still going to talk about it because it's pretty interesting. It's called a bombardier beetle.
Also known as the ass blaster scarab.
Oh, so you're aware of these?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for those of you that aren't, so they store hydroquinone and hydrogen peroxide in separate chambers in their abdomens. And when they're threatened, they actually have the ability to squirt these two chemicals from these chambers in their abdomen into a third reaction chamber, where they add in 2 catalytic enzymes, and then the chemicals undergo what was described as a violent exothermic reaction, expelling a boiling puff of acid gas and vapor. So imagine boiling acid being thrown at you by an animal. I was under the impression, because it was talking about these chambers being in the abdomen, that it was like puking this boiling acid at people.
It's
like
boiling butt barf instead.
Yeah, like I was picturing Zeitgeist from Deadpool 2 here, but in beetle form.
It's like that, but if you shaved his ass and taught him to hunt.
I'm leaving that in. Anyway, it turns out I was wrong, because it doesn't shoot this boiling acid out of its front end. It is a rear expulsion. And somehow this seems a little bit less impressive because, I mean, we've all eaten at Taco Bell. Not sponsored.
It's a whole new meaning to backdraft.
Oh, Now, further research revealed that this acid that they expel is actually nearly to the boiling point of water, and more interestingly, the reaction is an oxidation reaction, and so it oxidizes the hydroquinone, which causes a rapid production of gases. So basically, if you remember the science of pipe bombs that we talked about, it seems like if they were to get constipated, that they might turn into tiny pipe bombs. I don't really know. Maybe. It just seems like that's a possibility. And they can expel this spray in different directions. And so here's a quote from the Wikipedia page about their aiming abilities. Typically, the beetle turns its body so as to direct the jet toward whatever triggered the response. The gland openings of some African bombardier beetles can swivel through 270 degrees and thrust between the insect's legs, discharging the fluid in a wide range of directions with considerable accuracy. The muscles that prevent leakage from the reservoir additionally developed a valve permitting more controlled discharge of the poison and an elongated abdomen to permit better control over the direction of the discharge. And that's not all. The discharges are accompanied by audible detonations that sound like a pop. Now, they can do this about 20 times in a row, which is enough to cause a fatal reaction in some of their smaller would-be attackers. How fast they can release this toxic butt goo is faster than you can after eating a Taco Bell. It takes about 1/10 of a second for the mixing, reaction, and ejection to occur, and they store enough reactants in their little chambers to do it about 20 times in a row. Okay, well, they live on every continent except Antarctica.
But only west of the mountains, you said here.
Well, when I was looking them up, there's a lot of different species of them. So I don't know if there are different species of them that live east of the Rockies, but the species that I was reading an article specifically on identified them as living west of the Rockies. And it specifically called out, like, the Bay Area in California. Like, there's a lot of land west of the Rockies. Why are we focusing on the Bay Area?
I don't know.
It just seemed weird. It seemed like such a weird thing to throw into this article. Okay. So while using your body as a small pipe bomb...
Pipe bomb.
While using your body as a small pipe bomb to shoot boiling acid at your enemies is pretty badass. See what I mean?
Acid.
Yeah, it's not really going to qualify as arson, but it just felt appropriate to include because it's honestly the closest thing we have to a fire-farting dragon? It's the closest thing we have to an animal that can expel fire from an orifice.
Yeah. Considering this poor thing's whole existence, like you're just trying to take a walk and something attacks you and your ass goes off uncontrollably. Do you think they have control over it? Or do you think it's like a spontaneous thing? Like you said,
they can articulate their rear opening, so it sounds like they have control over it.
So they could probably at least aim it. Can they? Do you think they can control the rate of fire, or
can they control the rate of fire? Well, it said they can do it up to 20 times in a row, and it takes about 1/10 of a second for the reaction and expulsion to happen. I think it was like 0.12 seconds.
Fire fart bug goes Bert.
Bert?
Bert.
Bert.
Like a warthog, Bert. Bert.
Oh. So now let's get to the purpose of this episode, shall we? The fire starters. Now, the most common animal fire starters are cats and dogs. Why? Well, they live with humans, and humans have harnessed the power of fire. There are so many cases of dogs trying to investigate food on the stove, and then their paws hit the burner controls, and it results in a house fire that I couldn't possibly cover them all, and it would honestly get a little boring because it would just be the same story over and over. But don't get all self-righteous, cat owners, because cats may not be tall enough to hit the burner controls on the front of the stove, but when the burner controls are on the sides or the top, they are also equally prone to turning burners on and doing the same thing. And one story I came across was a case of a cat that apparently had a habit of sleeping on the top of a toaster, like one of those toasters that has like the pop-up bread.
How do you form that habit?
I don't know. Anyway, apparently it was napping on its toaster and got up, and in the process stepped on the little lever that started the toaster. And I don't know if there was crumbs in the toaster or a foreign object or something had gotten in there or whatever, but it started a house fire and burned the house down.
Oh, that cat hair that was in there.
Or the cat hair. Might have been that, yeah. Why would you leave the cat snapping toaster plugged in?
That's your question. You knew the cat was going to sleep on the toaster. Couldn't you unplug the toaster where the cat naps?
We don't allow our cats on the counter, but I'm not judging anyone that lets their cats on the counter. I'm just saying I don't want to come over for dinner. But yeah, if your cat's going to sleep on the toaster...
I'll eat your food, but I'll still judge you.
Oh, okay. If your cat's going to sleep on the toaster, all I'm saying is unplug the toaster. And there are, of course, tales of animals knocking over space heaters, knocking over candles, chewing on electrical cords, so keep your smoke detector batteries fresh because your animals may just be trying to murder you in your sleep. Just in case. But then there are the more creative dogs, like the one that managed to start a fire in 2014 in the Yukon Territory by chewing on Strike Anywhere matches. It's true. Don't worry, the dog was uninjured, and the residents were able to extinguish the fire before the fire department even arrived. But keep your Strike Anywhere matches secure from your pets.
In fact, if you're not using them, just send them to me, because I can't find anywhere to buy them now.
Oh, you can't?
Not lately. I just haven't seen them.
And I cannot find the story now, so I don't know if it's actually true or if it was like an urban legend, but I've heard of a dog grabbing a firework right after the owner lit the fuse and then running into the house through a doggy door.
I've seen videos of that.
Through the doggy door? Because the one I saw...
No, I saw one run off of it, not through a doggy door.
Yeah, I was going to say. I don't know if this is urban legend or if it actually happened, but I've heard that a dog started a house fire in that manner. Now, recently, the video that you're talking about that I have seen was the dog that grabbed the fireworks right after the fuse was lit and then ran around crazily around the yard while this spicy stick it found shot fireballs at all the humans that are now scrambling for safety.
It's such a good video.
Luckily, the dog was reportedly not harmed by this incident, but y'all, for safety's sake, keep your dogs on a lead when you're setting fire to things. And so now I present to you the most absurd fire starting story about a dog that I could locate. And of course it happened in the good old USA, in Missouri, and the Ozarks. And this case occurred in Carter County, which apparently is a bit rural because of what the author describes as just slightly on the edge of normal. And this description is so beautiful, I can't improve upon it. So I'm just going to read you the one paragraph article that was posted. Only in the Ozarks. We had a fire in Carter County yesterday, just east of Van Buren. And on the fire report, the cause we listed was debris burning. Well, this doesn't give the whole story. You see, here it goes. The landowner was burning a dead coyote in his front yard. Nothing real unusual about that, but slightly on the edge of normal for Carter County. Now,
they call that free lunch.
We're just getting to the details. The landowner had several hounds running around that had mange problems. The landowner decided that he would treat them with used motor oil and a few other liquids. Now you see where this is going. So one of the treated dogs got too close to the burning coyote and burst into flames. This treated flaming hound then took off through a field, and it was apparently a red alert fire day, and set several brush fires. Now, they said it didn't take long for the flaming hound to burn out, and to keep the wildfire acreage to a manageable size from the arson hound. And I have to say, they didn't give me enough information about the hound at the end of this. Like, I would like to know that the hound, was okay and recovered from its injuries. So Bill Gabbert, if you're listening, I'm gonna need a follow-up. I need to know the dog was okay, and if he wasn't, I need you to lie to me.
I'm now gonna teach my dog how to stop, drop, and roll.
You should. We should do that. Right after we teach the birds to stop smoking.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Birds. Birds are quite often accidental arsonists, but not always accidental ones either. We'll get into the not always an accident bird in a minute. But in April of 2009, a sparrow reportedly picked up a smoldering cigarette someone had discarded outside the door of a village shop in the UK. Apparently excited by its new smoldering treasure, it then flew into its nest under the eaves of the store, and as one might expect, if you're smarter than a sparrow, The dry leaves and twigs of the sparrow's nest easily ignited, and the resulting damage was estimated at 250,000 pounds, which I don't really know what that is in US dollars because I just don't care.
I don't know how much $1 weighs, much less that many pounds of it.
Now you might think, how could investigators know that that's what happened? Well, they were able to determine where the seat of the fire was from eyewitness accounts, and bafflingly, there was no electrical or gas appliances or anything they saw that could have started a fire in the area, so they suspected it was potentially arson. So they hired this special investigator, and when he came out, he noticed that in the other eaves around the building there were sparrow nests, and he found 35 cigarette ends in various sparrow nests.
Oh.
And all this time we've been focusing our anti-smoking campaigns on kids when the sparrows are clearly in desperate need of some interventions here. And apparently the sparrows are being a terrible influence on the pigeons because it happened again in March of 2024 in London, but this time it was a pigeon.
Wow. I've never seen a single warning about birds and lit cigarette ends.
However, not all birds take up arson as an adjunct to smoking. European starlings are apparently forming arson gangs. In Utah, a spokesperson for Rocky Mountain Power said that a downed power line caused a fire. That's not surprising at all, but what is surprising is that the power line was downed because apparently a huge flock of European starlings, and these are pretty sizable birds, had landed on the wire, and then they all took off en masse. And when they did that, it caused the wires that they were on to begin to bounce. And they bounced too closely, completing the circuit and causing one of the lines to fall, which ignited the fire. Now, Rocky Mountain Power said that they weren't sure that the downed power line was the cause of the fire, but that was the working theory at the time that they made the statement in 2008. Starlings.
Those birds were all sitting on that wire. All right, Jimmy. You get them going over there. Get them going over here.
Now, very large birds with wide wingspans can cause fires when their wings stretch out long enough to touch two adjacent power lines. However, power companies, knowing this, they do try to take measures to prevent this, but some birds are able to get around those pesky preventative measures, employing the help of other species. Admitted, it's not usually voluntary help. But in 2017, a fire burned 40 acres in Montana, and investigators discovered a dead hawk at the point of origin. It shouldn't have been large enough to touch the two wires together, but still grasped in its talons was a very dead and very surprised looking snake. I will show you a picture of the snake because it literally looks surprised. So it seems that the hawk was going to land on the power line with its pet snake in its talons, and when it landed, the snake hung down low enough to contact the lower power line, completing a quite unfortunate circuit that electrocuted both animals, and then they fell flaming onto the ground and ignited a brush fire.
And then this is why we do not walk on the wires naked.
What?
Because we will
complete the circuit
and cause fires and hurt.
Tell me that snake doesn't look shocked.
Wow. It doesn't.
I'll post it on our Instagram.
He looks crispy.
But he's got like
He does have his mouth open.
He's got a facial expression like... Yeah.
Yeah. What's worse than getting picked up by a hawk? Dangled in the power lines.
Getting dangled.
Dangled.
And then there's the fish that was blamed for a fire by investigators from the Grand Electric Company in Bison, South Dakota. Bafflingly, investigators found the remains of broiled fish lying across a transformer, bushing, arrestor, and other hardware on a power pole while investigating a wildfire.
They said broiled?
They said broiled.
Did they taste it? How did they...
I don't know. That wasn't in the article. But the best they could surmise is that a bird, some sort of raptor, was stashing its fish up there on the transformer and eventually dropped one that caused a face-to-face ground and resulted in the wildfire. So I don't think we can really qualify this as the fish started the fire. It seems like this was a frame job.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to show intent on behalf of the fish.
Now, crows are my absolute favorite birds, but they are not innocent in all this either. There's a shrine in Kyoto, Japan that has candles lining the exterior walkways to the building, and they kept having small grass fires in the surrounding areas. So researchers tried to see if they could determine how this might be happening, and what they found was that it's most probable that the crows are doing it. they found remnants of candles in the crows' nests. But the assumption is that these crows will occasionally take a lit candle and fly off with it. And usually these candles will go out during the flight, but on occasion, they're still smoldering and they get either stashed or dropped in the grassy fields around the shrine, setting off bushfires. Now, why would the crows even want these candles? Well, the candles are made with tallow, which is rendered beef fat, and crows are carnivores. So this shrine, which has more than 10,000 candles lining the walkway, is like a buffet for the crows. A beefy, beefy buffet. So researchers trying to solve this mystery of brush fires around the shrine, they basically just watched the crows, and they found that crows have zero fear of lit candles at all. They will just take the candles and fly off with them even if they're still lit. And these Japanese crows, they're not limiting themselves to starting fires with candles. No, they have other fire-starting antics. They also have developed a deep and dysfunctional love affair with metal clothes hangers. What? Yep, they are collecting metal clothes hangers to build their nests, and then those nests are too close to power lines, and boom, fire.
They're metal reinforcing their nests?
Apparently, I have a picture for you, but hold on. Apparently, the Tokyo government has spent millions of yen and actually employs full-time crews whose only job it is to search and destroy metal hanger nests built by crows to prevent blackouts. So, here is an example of a crow's metal hanger nest.
That's breathtaking. That's really nice. You did a good job.
They're quite impressive. Honestly, I feel like this is crows trying to make put a little bit of a talon forward into their own little industrial age. Like they're improving materials, finding stronger materials for their nests.
Yeah.
I think.
Where do they discover carbon fiber?
Anyway, but this is where we're going to cross over into the real arsonists of the animal world, the animals that are intentionally committing arson. Have you heard of black kites? Black kites are a bird, and they're also called fire kites, and they're found on 4 continents, and they feed on small prey like fish, lizards, carrion, large insects, other birds, bats, and rodents.
I thought you were going to say bombardier beetles.
No, maybe. I don't know. Maybe if they like spicy food. Well, scientists have been studying them because they have been seen hunting around the edges of wildfires. And honestly, it's a pretty smart thing to do if you're hunting small game. The game has to flee from the wildfire, and boom, it comes running out of the fire. Dinner.
It's already warm.
However, scientists had been hearing lots of anecdotal reports of black kites, which are also called fire kites, actually taking burning sticks from these wildfires and taking them some distance away to areas that were not yet on fire and dropping them in order to extend the fire and flush out new prey. Now, this might seem far-fetched, but black kites have also been seen dropping bread into rivers to lure fish to the surface so that they can easily fish and catch the fish.
Clever birdies.
So, scientists, and I mean, we know corvids are able to solve problems and use tools. If you don't know that, there's some great videos on YouTube. But it's actually estimated that crows have the problem-solving ability that's equivalent to that of a 4-year-old child. So it's not really far-fetched that another species would be able to understand cause and effect well enough to become little feathered arsonists. So in 2017, there's actually a scholarly article released in which researchers studied this phenomenon, and they actually were physically able to witness the birds picking up smoldering embers and dropping them in unburned locations as these grass fires started to burn down. And the birds were apparently not keen to be interviewed to discuss their motives. But it's reasonable to theorize that this is a hunting behavior.
They're notoriously closed-lipped around the press.
It's because they don't have lips.
That's like your opinion, man.
I don't want to focus just on birds here. We gotta talk about mammals.
Birds aren't real anyway.
Now we know the original, alleged, most infamous animal fire starter. Mrs. O'Leary's cow, Daisy. You know the story, right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You really don't? Oh, wow. So if you don't know the story, the Great Chicago Fire was initially blamed on a cow kicking over an oil lamp inside a barn. Mrs. O'Leary's
maybe
cow.
I did hear something, but yeah.
Yeah. Now, there have been other theories proposed, and the truth is that nobody really can prove for sure that Daisy started this fire. However, it is the most commonly repeated story of how the Great Chicago Fire started. In fact, inside the Chicago Fire Academy is a placard showing where the cornerstone of Mrs. O'Leary's barn reportedly had been, and it's like, or at least it was there 20 years ago when I was in Chicago, and there's like velvet ropes like roping it off.
That's nice.
And it is a believable story because livestock have a long history of starting fires. We've had fires started by pigs, chickens, cows, goats, sheep, and typically they end up turning over a heat lamp in a barn that ignites hay or animal bedding.
It's because people don't think to have their farm safety meetings on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they're just not aware of the danger.
Yeah, they're just uninformed.
There needs to be an effort to educate more farmers about mandatory safety briefings with livestock.
Well, don't think that only farm mammals are involved in fire starting. It's not limited to just livestock. In fact, in Vancouver, a beaver started a fire in 2013.
Well, that's easy to believe.
He went about chewing on his tree of choice, and being a good beaver, he was successful in his work, caused the tree to fall into some adjacent power lines, which then started a brush fire. Easy to believe. But not to be outdone, squirrels also have carried some fire-starting blame. You see, there are multiple cases of squirrels and power lines starting brush fires, but a squirrel in South Dakota was playing more of a long game in 2012. A couple was leaving Wind Cave National Park in their Dodge pickup with their 2 dogs, and as they're driving along, they began to smell the odor of smoke, and they initially thought that there must be a nearby brush or forest fire, but soon they realized the smoke was coming from inside the truck.
Inside the truck.
As the passenger compartment began filling with smoke, they were able to safely pull over, they got their dogs out of the vehicle, and when the fire department showed up and began to put out the fire, they found that the entire engine compartment had been crammed full of pine cones.
Oh, no.
While they had been camping at this national park. And then, of course, there's a myriad of stories of mammals climbing power poles that led to very poor outcomes for the animals, and they include bobcats, mountain lions, bears, squirrels, and basically just about anything that can climb.
Those squirrels were like, hey, here's the problem. We got too many of these pine cones. Let's put them in here and they'll go away.
That's when they were just redecorating. But some bears are more civilized, and instead of just starting brush or wildfires, they go straight for the kitchen fires.
Bears?
Bears.
Like from cooking eggs?
Well, in October of 2023, so not that long ago, a bear broke into a cabin in California, and it found canned food in the kitchen, which apparently just incensed it because it was not capable of operating a can opener.
Well, maybe it was, and they only had one of those little army can openers.
So this incensed bear allegedly began tossing the canned food around the kitchen, where it then hit the stove controls, turned on a burner, and the cabin ultimately burned to the ground.
Oh, no.
And they were able to determine that it was actually the bear that caused the fire from security cameras, because this was like a rental cabin that somebody owned and rented out, and so they had security cameras around the outside, and they could see the bear.
Has the bear been arrested?
I don't know.
Do they have a description of the bear? Maybe you could give it out to people and be on the lookout.
I'll see if I can find a picture.
Okay.
All right, but that isn't even the craziest bear arson story. Let me just read you this headline. Falling bear blamed for highway fire and destruction of cop car. In 2019, a county sheriff's patrol vehicle was struck by a falling bear while traveling on the highway. The report states that the bear either jumped or fell from an embankment over the highway and landed squarely on the hood of the deputy's cruiser, causing the vehicle to veer off the road, strike an embankment, roll over, and catch fire. The bear then fled the scene. The officer was able to escape the crash, but the vehicle caught fire and was a complete loss and started a vegetation fire adjacent to the road. You don't have to be as big of a bear to cause mass chaos. Even insects have been blamed for fires. A 650-acre wildfire in Fort Davis, Texas, was reportedly started by ants.
Fire ants?
No, just regular ants. They were able to infiltrate an underground electrical conduit and caused a short that started a huge brush fire.
Did they at least try to frame the fire ants?
I don't know. But not to be outdone, in Cooley City, Washington in 2001, a grasshopper jumped on an electric fence, and his poor little incinerated body fell to the ground where it ignited a fire on the Colville Indian Reservation. The fire spread to 3,500 acres before it was brought under control and even took down a few sheds in the process, but luckily no other buildings.
How are you going to light up a grasshopper with an electric fence?
I don't know.
How does it ground itself?
I don't know. All right, we'd be remiss if we didn't also include some reptiles and amphibians. An alligator being kept as a pet in, guess what state?
Florida.
Pennsylvania.
I was going to say something ridiculous like Pennsylvania. And I was like, let's just get through it.
Pennsylvania. So this house alligator apparently not...
House alligator?
House alligator.
Is that
house
a
pet.
breed of alligator?
No, it's a house pet. That's an alligator. It allegedly knocked over a space heater, igniting a house fire. And while I couldn't find a story of an amphibian starting a fire, I did find quite the amusing story of a frog that absolutely vexed a fire department in 2005, to say nothing of the homeowner. And this was in...
Taos, New Mexico.
Florida. In Orange County. So a resident calls the fire department because they can hear a screaming cat. And they have exhaustively searched for it, and they've determined that the only place it can be is trapped in the walls of their home. So the fire department responds, and they spend 8 hours cutting through walls and even cutting through piping, searching for this screaming kitten. And finally, they find the source of the screaming, and it wasn't a cat at all. It was a tiny Cuban tree frog singing his heart out.
Oh, no way.
They cut into walls, drilled through pipes, like they destroyed this house looking for this frog. Can you imagine what that homeowner's insurance claim looked like? Now, what about marine mammals?
Fire-breathing...
Blue whales?
Jellyfish.
Honestly, jellyfish aren't mammals.
Oh, I missed the mammal part.
Okay, well, what about marine mammals?
Oh, mammals.
Yeah. Now, honestly, I did look, but they're off the hook. It seems that they stick to sinking boats and committing indecent acts on unsuspecting tourists that pay for the swim with the dolphins encounter.
Talking about dolphins, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. But I couldn't find any fires.
Look to the sea cow.
Okay. I'll check out sea cows, but I didn't find any sea cows starting fires either.
They're very sneaky.
Okay. Now, not all animals are intent to see the world burn, or the walls of a perfectly fine house to be torn down in search of a frog imitating a cat.
Or whatever they see through the crosshairs between their legs.
Right. There's actually stories of animals that not only have saved their people from fires by alerting them, but there are even animal firefighters. Step aside, Smokey the Bear. Your offspring are burning down cabins and totaling police cruisers. It's time for a new breed of animal fire prevention officers.
Porcupine.
And honestly, the truth is that animals have long been used in fire prevention and firefighting. Goats are frequently used to head off brush fires or wildfires because they can so quickly strip an area of vegetation that they can be used to cause fire breaks. Dalmatians were originally used by fire departments to clear the roads of dogs and other animals when the engines were all horse-drawn. And they were also companions for the horses. And in the movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy...
I love that movie.
A rhinoceros is apparently seen stamping out a fire. As a result of that scene, many believe that rhinos help to stop or control fires in their areas by stomping them out. But the cases that have been reported were typically campfires that had people around them, and so it seems more likely that the rhinos were actually trying to attack humans and the campfire just happened to be in the way.
Typical rhino.
So scientists don't believe rhinos have actually helped control fires, so no need to sell your fire department brush truck and get a rhinoceros. Instead, you want to go pachyderm. Elephants in Indonesia are being used to help combat jungle fires. They're being outfitted to carry water pumps and other equipment and to patrol burned areas in the natural forests after the fires have been put out to ensure that there's no remaining hotspots that may reignite.
I thought they came with the water. Why did they gotta add a water pump? Just put like a reservoir back there and got it.
Okay. And in our very last crazy true story of animal fire rescues, a lion rescued the actor that played Tarzan from a fire.
Nice.
This is a totally true story. So Steven, and I'm not sure how to say his last name because it's Croatian, Sipek,
What am I going to do, correct you?
Sure. Sipek, who went by the stage name Stephen Hawks. He played Tarzan in a 1969 Spanish-made version of Tarzan alongside Kitty Swan. And then in 1972, they filmed a sequel called Tarzan and the Brown Prince.
It was Tarzan.
And there was a scene in which, I'm just going to call him Steven. Steven and his co-star were tied down. However, somehow fuel had been spilled and a fire ignited that quickly got out of control, and the two actors were reportedly completely engulfed in flames and they can't escape, and the crew has panicked. However, the lion had actually been trained, the lion that starred in the movie had been trained to remove these bonds for the scene that they were shooting, and so the lion rushes in and frees them and gets both actors out of there. So Steve actually suffered burns over 90% of his body and Swan over 25%. And he was so thankful to this lion that he vowed to pay the lion back by looking after big cats for the rest of his life. So he relocated to, and I'm going to say this wrong, I'm sorry, Florida, Loxahatchee?
Is that Florida?
Yeah.
You're probably close.
Loxahatchee, we're going with that. Where he started an animal sanctuary.
And his name is Joe Exotic.
No, but there is a tie to Joe Exotic. I'll explain in a minute.
Oh.
He started an animal sanctuary at his home property there, and he actually ended up suffering 2 more fires that I know of. Reportedly, arsonists set fire to his house in 1985.
But the lions fought back?
And in 2004, just a week after his pet tiger ran away and was killed by police, his house again caught fire, only this time it was an electrical fire that started with an exploding air conditioner unit, and when firefighters responded, they had to wait 17 minutes for Steven's pet tiger, lion, leopard that were all caged outside, and his black leopard and lioness that were his house pets to all be accounted for and secured before they could access the property to fight the fire.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. So before you go honoring exotic, life-saving animals by making them your pets and keeping them in your home, just know that he was later arrested because he wasn't taking proper care of the animals and had not corrected safety violations and wasn't feeding them properly and didn't have all the required permits, and
he wasn't having the required safety meetings with the lions about fire.
And remember how Carol Baskin would always speak out about personal ownership of lions and tigers and big cats and call out people who were keeping them improperly? Apparently in the past he had bought tiger cubs from Carol Baskin's Big Cat Rescue, and then later on she was speaking out about how he shouldn't have those tiger cubs.
That bitch Carol Baskin.
Yeah, it's basically the general consensus about her. But I got to agree, I don't think people should really be keeping exotic cats as pets.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion. Keep it over there.
Well, his tiger, Bobo, escaped and tried to attack a mailman and had to be put down by police.
There were signs that there were problems with this from the get-go. He named the tiger Bobo.
And apparently he had 2 other large cats escape at different times.
I'm not saying just anyone should own them.
So he wasn't a great owner. All right, now before we cover this last little factoid, I just want to give everyone a trigger warning. This one involves intentional harm to animals, but it occurred back in 266 BC. None of us were there, but it is pretty inhumane and horrific thing to do, and there's no excusing that. And so I don't want anyone to think that any jokes we make about this are condoning or making light of these practices.
Too soon?
But it's... but it has to be mentioned. Have you heard of incendiary pigs?
No.
War pigs?
Yeah.
So, according to ancient Greek military writers, the ancient Greeks around 266 BC would thwart their enemies that used war elephants by covering pigs with combustible pitch, crude oil, or resin, set them alight, and then drive them towards their enemies that were coming toward them with their war elephants. This would cause the elephants to bolt in terror from these flaming and squealing pigs, and apparently the result was that the elephants would panic and begin trampling a great number of their own soldiers.
I don't think I saw that movie.
And yes, for those of us that care about animals, this is horrific and inhumane, but none of us were there around 266 BC, so when we just take a moment to think about the fact that after the battle they had fresh barbecue.
I was going to say, that's loving your enemies right there, sending them a fresh barbecue.
It's terrible what they did, and but this was in primitive times, and can you imagine the chaos of stampeding elephants, flaming pigs, and a war being fought by hand with primitive weapons all at the same time?
Only in Middle Earth.
So, but humans, I mean, we've done some crappy things to animals in the past. This one's pretty far up there.
I'm not taking responsibility for it. I didn't do it.
I didn't do it either. Anyway, and so that concludes our episode on animal arsonists and some animal heroes and firefighters. And, of course, what did you call it? The
Ass Blaster Scarab.
The Ass Blaster Scarab. I think we should put that on a t-shirt.
The Ass Blaster Scarab?
Yeah, why not?
There are many reasons why not. But let's do it anyway.
You know a guy with a 270-degree articulating anus?
Well, I don't know about that particular part. The rest of it sounds just like John Travolta. Ever seen that guy on the dance floor? What you just described is John Travolta.
Okay, let's go through that again, and you explain to me which part's John Travolta.
All right.
It turns its body so that it directs the jet toward whatever triggered the response.
Travolta. Dance off.
And thrust between the insect's legs, discharging the fluid in a wide range of directions with considerable accuracy.
Obviously John Travolta.
He...
Can do all the... Yeah, totally.
What's he spraying around?
Well, I don't know.
Disco fever?
This didn't go where I thought it was going to go.
I'm trying to follow you. I'm just not there.
I don't know. I can just see him dancing when you describe it. It's just John Travolta.
All right.
Doing his Travolta boogie or whatever.
It's Travolta boogie.
I don't know what it's called. I used to cheat off a Corvid that sat next to me in math class.
You know how your dog will sometimes walk around and your cat will meow while you're trying to record? Really rapid release backfires. I don't know what to call it.
Like somebody put a glizzy switch on a stink bug. I bet that's spicy if you eat one.
I just said discharge a lot. but that's not all. Are you ready for more?
Let me get my bucket. Hit me.
I just found this so amusing.
I think they have little crosshairs under there that they look through.
They can swivel the outlet 270 degrees.
This is a highly articulated anus. Is it an anus?
I didn't say it was an anus. It just said outlet.
Outlet. It gives a whole new meaning to outlet mall, doesn't it?
Oh my god.
No outlet. Thank God. We're going that way.
Yeah. You insult my pitch again, we're going to have a beef.
Did you say pyrotechnic halitosis?
Mm-hmm.
We should put that into a Mary Poppins song. I have the taser ready.
Oh, stop. We've long heard legend. Nope.
Oh yeah, we have long-haired legend already.
All right.
The first rule of Ass Blaster Scarab safety is always point your Ass Blaster Scarab in a safe direction. Don't point your Ass Blaster Scarab at anything you don't wish to annoy.
Make sure you have control of your 270-degree articulating ass nozzle. That's like a turret, like an ass turret.
That breaks the 180 plane.
A butt turret. A buttocks turret. Buttockernant.
Ass acid blaster. What in the world is she?
She's making fart noises with her back.
I can do it in the shower too.
She's rehearsed this.
We're so blessed.
Mm-hmm. That's actually pretty good. Thankfully, she doesn't have a third mixing chamber.
I feel like we're getting roasted by our own child.
What does that mean?
I'm gonna have to powder these floors.
Wow, I had no idea that you can make such effective fart noises with your back on a hardwood floor.
I didn't either. And I was a kid before.
I didn't have hardwood floors when I was a kid. We had carpet. If you do not have enough fart noises in your life, consider children. Because they will find new and exciting ways to make fart noises while you're trying to record a podcast.
If you own livestock, don't forget to have your regular fire safety meetings. You could really just tell the donkey, and he'll tell all the rest of the barnyard critters. Perhaps it was running from his farts.
I get the dog to calm down. Anyway, if anyone else has any stories of animal arsonists, or even funny fireground stories, or funny firefighter stories, or funny criminal fire stories, or interesting stories, go ahead and email them to us at crimetoburn@gmail.com. Maybe we'll include them in a future episode.